Hello and welcome to Digital Stratosphere, the podcast that provides independent and technology-agnostic advice to help organizations through their digital transformation journeys. Whether you're part of an organization that is upgrading its ERP system, implementing new CRM or HCM software, or considering any other enterprise technologies, this is the show that you need to learn everything you need to know on how to make your digital transformation successful. My name is Sarah Djokovic and I'm your host, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to be providing an introduction to digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is such a common buzzword used in the industry today, but what does it exactly mean? So we're going to cover this topic as well as lessons from recent digital transformation initiatives across the globe. And joining me for today's discussion is Eric Kimberling, who is the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting Group. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Of course. And so just before we get kind of started into this whole conversation, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Eric Kimberling. Like you said, I've been in the enterprise software and digital transformation space now since the late 90s. So a little over 20 years. Started my career at one of the big 5 consulting firms, one of the big system integrators, focused primarily on organizational change, but through the years had become more focused on a variety of different services and activities during digital transformation, including software selection and project management of implementation, organizational change, process reengineering, and things of that nature. And for the last couple of years, I've been the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, which is a company I started back in 2018.
Amazing. Awesome. And what exactly does Third Stage Consulting do?
So we're an independent and technology agnostic consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformations. So we'll help clients select the right software. We'll help them define their digital strategy and roadmap. We'll help them manage the implementation. We'll help them with the organizational change, and really just guiding clients through the entire journey. And the most important part of our business model and who we are is that we're 100% independent. So we're not affiliated with any software vendors. We don't sell software. We don't get commissions to recommend certain solutions. So we're truly independent and agnostic and are here to represent clients' interests rather than that of the vendors. So that's a bit about who we are and what we do.
Awesome. So just to start off like this whole topic of digital transformation, and to give us all some kind of background context, how exactly would you define a digital transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a buzzword that's commonly used, and it's like you said at the beginning, it's somewhat of a vague word, and a lot of different meanings out there. But generally, the way we define it is any sort of technology initiative that enables improvements to a business would be our definition of digital transformation. So a lot of times companies think about ERP systems, which are enterprise resource planning systems. There's customer relationship management technology out there that helps sales teams automate their processes. There's human capital management or HCM technology that helps HR departments automate their businesses. So it's any one of these types of examples of technology, any sort of technology of business transformation that helps improve a business is essentially the way we define digital transformation. But probably the biggest differentiator in the way we think about it is that it's more focused on the business than the digital or the technology part of it. Even though digital is the key leading word, it's really more about how you improve your business, how you can make your organization more effective, and technology is just one of several pieces that can enable that sort of approach.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. And as far as some of the different technologies and organizations that might consider this kind of digital transformation, who are those kinds of organizations?
So really, a lot of times it's companies that are smaller organizations that are scaling for growth. They've gone through a lot of change. They've acquired new customers. They're expanding quickly. A lot of times they find that they've outgrown their financial or accounting software. So they start off by trying to implement some broader technology that can help automate their business to help them scale. So a lot of times it could be those smaller to mid-sized organizations. A lot of times it could be a bigger organization that's gone out and acquired a bunch of other companies, and they're therefore trying to figure out how to tie together all their processes and systems with all these acquisitions they've made. And then there's other companies that are just, more mature, older companies, bigger companies that are just looking for technology as a way to drive down their cost, increase their efficiency, and just give them a better financial position. So it's really organizations of any size or industry or type. They might have different things that they lead with or different priorities, but really any sort of organization might be right for a digital transformation, especially if they found that they've outgrown some of their old systems.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Everything from the more beginner stages to more of the advanced. So that's really awesome. I love that. Yeah. And with all of these different technologies, what are some of the business benefits that the organizations would typically realize with a digital transformation and those kinds of initiatives?
There's a lot of them. I mean, probably the most common business benefits are going to be cost reductions, is one example. So companies that can spend less money on inefficient processes, or if they have too many people on their staff that are doing inefficient things, they can use technology to make processes more efficient, more effective, to where they can redeploy those people to go do something more strategic or something different within the organization. So it's a way you can increase either labor costs or process costs, or in some cases you can reduce your inventory. For example, if you're a manufacturing organization, a lot of times they'll find that they can reduce their inventory by having better systems out there. Or if there's an organization that's super capital intensive, that has a lot of fixed assets or big capital investments that they're spending a lot of money on, technology can oftentimes make more informed decisions or better decisions for those organizations. So that's one example, is kind of that broad bucket of cost savings. There's also, on the revenue side, you can also see revenue increases, particularly if you start talking about CRM or customer relationship management software, where sales teams now are equipped with better information and better knowledge about their customers and potential customers, so they're therefore able to sell more. That's one way that it can help increase revenue. But even getting back to some of the efficiencies, if we have a better visibility into our inventory and what products or services we have on hand or be able to offer our customers, oftentimes that efficiency gain can also translate into top line revenue growth as well. So most organizations focus on those two buckets to start, the cost reduction and then also the top line revenue increase. But I think the big important part of the question you ask is that a lot of organizations don't take the time to quantify what they think their benefits are going to be. So that's the key, is really to define what ways technology could specifically help you either increase your revenue or decrease your cost or provide you some other sort of business benefit. Really starting to quantify those is very important. But those are probably the two biggest buckets that we see.
Yeah, no, it's super crucial for any kind of business to keep the cost low and get the revenue up. So
I know. It sounds so simple. You wonder why more organizations don't do that. But
no, absolutely. And I think a lot of the reasons people do it is, one, they probably don't know stuff like that exists, but two, like, it could be a very daunting task, I think, for a lot of people too, to have to then find somebody to come in and really rearrange a lot of things that maybe haven't been working and make them more efficient in the way that they are working. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, when we come back from a quick break, I'm going to ask Eric a bit about some tips to get started and the pitfalls to look out for during your digital transformation. So we'll be right back with more of the Digital Stratosphere podcast. So welcome back to the Digital Stratosphere podcast, and we are here with Eric Kimberling, and we are continuing the conversation here. So Eric, if I'm part of an organization that is about to embark on a digital transformation, where does one begin and how would they get started?
Well, it's a great question. And maybe I'll start off by saying where not to begin. A lot of organizations think that they should begin by just going out and looking for all the different technologies that are out there, or starting to evaluate potential technologies. And you want to get to that point eventually. But even before you do that, or just start seeing demos of the software, it's very helpful to define what your needs are. Basically, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? How are your processes working today? How could they work in the future? What are some of those potential improvements that you would expect to see from technology, and really just prioritizing what it is you want to be when you grow up, for lack of a better word. So once you have that definition of here's who we are today and here's what we want to be in the future and here's how technology can help us, or how we think we want to use technology to help us improve our business. Once we've got that defined, then we can start to evaluate potential systems and look at systems that best enable that, or that might best enable those improvements that we're expecting to see. So that's probably the biggest thing, is really just sitting down with your stakeholders and all the business people or the business leaders within your organization to define all the different pockets of opportunity to improve your business and really understand what it is you need and what you want your processes to look like in the future. And then from there, you can start defining, what potential technology might help you out.
And as far as the kind of risks or the pitfalls, what should organizations and teams kind of look out for when embarking on this digital transformation?
Well, there's a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of risks that organizations face and a lot of pitfalls that they fall into. One of the biggest ones is leading with the technology and really focusing too much on the technology and not enough on the business and how you want to improve your business processes, your organizational structure, just looking for redundancies in the organization that could be improved. So really not forgetting, I guess, the takeaway or the lesson or the risk that we help clients avoid a lot of the time is making sure that they don't fall into the trap of just focusing on technology and not considering the people and the process side of the transformation. And again, it gets back to your first question about what is digital transformation, or how do we define it? With a word like digital, it makes you think it's all about technology, but when you really start to peel back the onion, it's really not about technology. It's really more about improving your business and being more effective and just having a better structured organization. So that's probably the biggest one, is not to lead with technology. There's a whole host of other mistakes that organizations make, from choosing the wrong technology or having unrealistic expectations to begin. That's a really big problem or risk or pitfall, is that a lot of times sales reps from the software vendors will kind of mismanage expectations to where people think it's going to be easier and cheaper than it really is. And really cutting through that sales hype and really having a realistic view is very important in these transformations. And then another big common one is not focusing enough on organizational change management. So back to the point about not focusing too much on technology, but more specifically, really doubling down and focusing intensely on the organizational change or the human aspect of the transformation. Because no matter who you are, what organization you're in, you're going to have resistance to the changes because you're disrupting people's lives. Even if it's for the better, it's a painful process for the human side of it. So really making sure that you have a framework and approach that addresses that is very important. So those are just a few of them. I mean, I could go on for an hour just rattling off a whole laundry list of hundreds of risks, but those are probably the biggest ones that we see with our clients.
That's the thing, with no risk, no reward, right? So there has to be some sort of risk involved, but also like knowing what you're getting into. And I think the more clarity that a company would have, the easier I would assume the process would be too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Are there like any other closing thoughts or advice that you would like to leave our listeners with for today?
Well, I think the big takeaway is the theme of focusing on people, process, and technology. So when you're embarking on your digital transformation or just starting to think about it, really think about not just what is the technology that we could enable to make our processes, our organization better, but focus more time than you probably think you need to on your business processes and on your organization, and just figuring out what do we want to look like in the future. So that's probably the biggest one. The second takeaway, or kind of if you have to remember a second thing from this whole discussion, it'd be to really invest heavily in organizational change in the people side. It's very common that organizations regret after the fact not spending enough time and money. In fact, I have yet to meet a CIO or a C-level executive who says, you know what, we spent too much time and too much money on the organizational change piece of it. In fact, it's usually the opposite. It's usually they wish they would have spent a lot more time and money on it. So that's probably the biggest takeaway there too, is it may not seem intuitive. You may feel like everyone's going to be open to the change and it's not going to be as painful as you think, but chances are very high that it's going to be more painful than you think, especially to other people in the organization. So that's the second thing, is really having that change management focus.
Yeah. taking care of the people is where it's at.
Yes, exactly.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Eric. Now, if our listeners want to learn more, what are some resources that you might suggest for them as well?
Sure. So in addition to subscribing to this podcast and listening to the content we have on here, it's also going to our website. We have a lot of technology agnostic white papers and blogs and videos. If you go to Third Stage, all one word, -consulting.com, has a lot of good content out there for people. And if you also look up on YouTube, if you look up Third Stage Consulting and or my name, you can subscribe to my personal channel and or the Third Stage YouTube channel. Those are also great resources for some thought leadership in this area.
Yeah, those videos are awesome. Check them out.
Well,
Great. Well, Eric, we're out of time right now, but thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of that knowledge with all the listeners. I'm sure they really appreciate your time as well. And thank you all for listening to today's podcast as well. My name again is Sarah Dogovich, and we'll see you next time on our next episode of Digital Stratosphere podcast.